Hi, I'm Dennis Andres with a YouTube video for people that identify as spiritual. And today's topic, fear. Now, if you're a spiritual person, someone who identifies as spiritual, somebody walking the spiritual path, you know that fear is not an issue that we can just avoid. Sometimes as spiritual people, we think that it's not a good thing to have fear. But the truth is, there's nothing good or nothing spiritual about ignoring fear when we've already got it. Today, I'll address fear through 5 questions. And the first is, what is fear? Fear is an emotion. Emotions arose during human evolution as a way to serve us. Emotions are bundles of thoughts and feelings. So when you're having fear, it is a feeling, but there's also a thought that you're holding at the same time. The second thing to know about emotions is that every single one of them, even the uncomfortable ones, are here to deliver us a message. What is the message of fear? Well, fear has several things that it can share with us. But the most important is that fear is designed to protect us. Now, if you're in the middle of the street and you're having fear that a bus coming down the street is going to run you over, that's a physical fear, and you should listen to it. That is a real danger, and fear is doing you a big favor by telling you to get out of the way. But today, I want to talk about what most spiritual people face more often, which are psychological fears. In this context, fear has a similar message that isn't identical, but's pretty close. Fear isn't necessarily telling you about danger, but it is telling you that something you care about is at stake. How much do you care about your spiritual growth? Well, if you're like me, you think about it a lot. Your spirituality is the way to connect with the divine, with others, with the planet, with a deeper part of yourself. To me, it's the most important thing of all. So, understanding that fear gives us this message helps us answer the next question about fear, which is this: is it unspiritual to have fear? The answer is no, it's not. In fact, if you're on the spiritual path, because what you're involved with are things that are important to you and they're at stake, you're going to face a lot of fear. I could make the case that the bigger the opportunity to grow, the more fear that you're facing. That might change your perspective. Instead of thinking that the person with the least fear is the most spiritual, maybe it's the person that's trying to change and grow the most that faces the most fear of all. Now that you understand that fear is not your enemy, but an ally trying to give you a message, trying to let you know that something's at stake, what can you do to handle fear? What is the message of fear? Well, fear is unique among the emotions in that it really gets your attention. I like to think of fear as like an alarm clock. An alarm clock wakes you up to what you're facing in front of you. But you can see what the problem is with fear. If you don't turn that alarm clock off, it is really hard to get anything done. My point is that having fear doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you have a flaw. Let me give an example. As an outdoor guide, I would meet many people who told me they had a fear of heights. And yet, when I would ask them about the plane ride that they took to Arizona, they said everything went smoothly. Yet they were 10,000 feet up in the air, and with me on the trail, just a couple hundred feet off the ground. Why were people so comfortable up in a plane? It's because what they had wasn't really a fear that's a weakness, something you should overcome. Instead, they're afraid of falling. That's not a fear, that's a superpower. And when you're walking on trails with cliff edges, that part of you that tells you to get back off the edge is doing you a favor. I feel that fear is the same way. Yes, it can be alarming like the clock, but it's not trying to take us down. Unfortunately, since we've been taught that fear is the enemy, fear is unspiritual, fear is something we should try to avoid, we can't really hear that message very well. And that's when fear becomes a problem. When we suppress fear, it's like hiding something away. When you hide something away out of shame or embarrassment, you become vulnerable to blackmail. What is blackmail? It's a crime. When somebody takes something that's hidden of yours and threatens to expose it to the world. That's the voice we hear inside of our head when we have fear that we don't want to admit or let ourselves have a relationship with. How do you handle fear? Well, this is the fourth question. And the truth is, with any blackmailer, the secret way to get out of blackmail is to call its bluff. It threatens you that this situation is going to become totally horrible. But what you do is, instead of letting it expose that information that you've had hidden, you reveal it to yourself. And that leads to my technique on how to handle fear that you can try. People playing poker commonly use a bluff. What is a bluff? It's trying to manipulate the other person to do something based on false information. Basically, you're faking it. And likewise, your ego is faking it when it tells you that your fear is going to take you down if you get in touch with it or if you actually experience it. So I call this technique for handling fear, calling fear's bluff. How do you do it? First, start with a situation you feel fearful about. For practice, maybe you don't want to take your worst fear of all time. Start with something that's kind of a low to moderate feel right now. Second, imagine the situation. I'd like you to do this in a visualization. If you find it's difficult for you to get in touch with your emotions, feel free to exaggerate the situation. Make it much worse. If you're afraid that something you do will cause a few of your friends to reject you, then imagine the whole country rejecting you, maybe the whole world. Again, you're just doing it in your mind. You're not attracting it in reality, just to help you get in touch with the feeling. Then in that visualization, go in and experience the reality that you're so afraid of. Let your feelings come up. Let shaking, crying, tightness, and openness, a warmth, a cool temperature, whatever physical sensation is there, let it be there. In the visualization, imagine saying the things you'd be saying if the worst case scenario happened, and then make it even worse. Another way you can do this, if you're uncomfortable with the visualization, is simply to journal through your fear. Start with the question on top or a statement of the scenario that you think is the worst that could happen. And just write about it, whatever comes to your mind. Free associate. Write in a stream of consciousness matter. You don't have to make it logical, rational, or orderly. Just let yourself write. This is how you call your bluff. You call the bluff of fear, and you'll be amazed by what happens. That's because there's a reward for handling your fear. What is the reward for handling fear? Well, I told you two things about emotions, but I left out the third. All human emotions have energy. Imagine having a packet of energy delivered to you in the box called fear. When you take the fear out of the situation, energy will show up on your behalf. When you tap into the fear and release that outer shell, you'll find you get the energy that's inside. That energy is going to be so helpful for you. It's either going to make you feel more confident or it's going to make you feel more creative. It might make you feel clearer or it might make you feel courageous. That means you'll be able to take the action you need to that the fear was keeping from happening. If you're on this spiritual path, I honor you. I really have a lot of respect for people willing to deal with fear. And like I said, if your spiritual fear is part of your path, but hopefully after today, you no longer need to see it as an enemy. It's an ally showing you what you really care about.